I'm Peter Beagle. I've been doing what I do for a long time, since about 1960, when I published my first novel, A Fine and Private Place. And most people, if they know my work at all, know The Last Unicorn, which is why I'm here, screening the movie in any number of theaters. How many in the, I don't know how many in the Minneapolis area. I think 4. But meanwhile, we're just racketing around the country in different legs of the tour. Currently the Midwest, next month Utah, Southwest. And when you're my age, it's exciting. Tiring, but exciting.
So are you riding a unicorn?
No, we tried to arrange that. But either there was a civic ordinance against it, or there was a question of cleaning up after unicorns. No, it's never gone through.
So when you say you're doing what you do since 1960, what do you consider yourself, a writer, a screenwriter, a musician?
I've been a writer really since before I could write, when I used to make up stories and get my mother to write them down for me. But I've made a living at it since about, 1963, when I had people to feed. But I worked as a musician for walking around with me, as we call it, and I've done screenwriting, television writing. I did a lot of magazine writing at one point for magazines that no longer exist, like Holiday, the Saturday Evening Post, and so on. But in recent years, what's been coming in has been coming in through strict fiction.
Okay, and that includes reprinting stories?
Reprinting stories there are stories that have followed me around for years in one form or another. And then, of course, the movie of The Last Unicorn has made the difference.
And there was some trouble with the movie originally, I gather.
It's a long story that really don't even have the time to go into now, but basically it had to do with not being paid for the DVD sale for the movie. The original company found all kinds of reasons that they didn't owe me anything. And that lasted really the movie came out in 1982. The DVD came out and sold well. But until my business manager, Connor Cochran, got involved with it and got interested and started calling people and asking questions, nothing came in. It was just succès d'estime. Looked good, nice reviews. Everybody loved it and was growing up with it, but I was getting nothing out of it.
Oh. So what we're currently showing, and here it is, some 30-odd years later, right. That's a digital remastering from a different print?
Yeah, it is the best looking print by far that has ever been. And it's a pleasure to watch people who have never seen it on the big screen, who only know it from home video. It's a pleasure to watch people reacting all over again to the full screen, big screen Last Unicorn. I'm startled by it myself.
What's been your favorite reaction?
I keep having people come up to me afterwards saying, "Thank you for my childhood." I can't imagine, a better compliment than that, really.
That's pretty good. Now, there was a stage presentation.
People also say, "It's an honor to meet you." And I try to explain that it's an honor to me that they've actually come out, sometimes on a cold night, sometimes traveling long distances, to see a movie they know practically by heart and still want to see again.
Do you think it's a different experience seeing it on a small screen in 1982 versus a larger screen now?
I think so, also because they're with people who love the movie the same way they do. And because, as we've been trying to do, Connor and I are there to conduct a Q&A session, answer any questions that anybody thinks to bring up, and tell them, apart from peddling merchandise, books and unicorn wands and so on, telling them what's been going on, what will be going on, and what to look for.
what is the question you get asked the most that you would like to answer now so that people don't ask it anymore?
Well, they will anyway, but the question is always, what inspired you to write The Last Unicorn? What was your inspiration? And I've evolved an answer which is perfectly true. That it wasn't a question of inspiration, but of desperation. I was sharing a cabin in the country, in the Berkshires, Massachusetts, with one of my 3 oldest friends, who was always the painter, and we were growing up across the street from each other, the same way I was always the writer, the storyteller. We've known each other since we were 5. And the summer of '62, when I was 23, he wasn't yet 23, we determined that this was going to be our professional, no-nonsense, hard-working summer. He had paintings in his head he wanted to do, and I'd already published one book and had another one turned down. So I was a good bit at loose ends, not at all sure what I was going to do next. And we spent that summer having a great time. It was a lovely place on a hillside, and we'd cook very strange food and play our guitars late at night, as we've been doing for many years. But the fact is that he'd be coming home every afternoon or late towards evening with more paint on the canvas, and I didn't have anything to show him. And I finally started The Last Unicorn just to show him that I was working too, totally at random. I was making that story up as I went along, but at least I had something to show. And that's really how it started.
Okay, well now you've got me curious. What kinds of food did you make then?
Well, the one it was basically improvised out of whatever was in the refrigerator. The basis of it all was usually rice-a-roni chicken pilaf, or whatever else we could get cheaply. And then it depended on, we'd throw in meat and onions and tomato sauce, and I don't know what this is, but if we don't use it for something, it's going to grow a coat of fur and we'll have to give it a name. So we'd throw that in too. And neither of us can remember exactly how we did it because it was different every night. And it had a particular nickname for it. I should mention it today that I probably shouldn't mention on YouTube.
Okay, probably not. You say you did music, and you've written some songs.
I love writing songs. That's fun. Novel writing is fiction writing is work. In the same way that doing a screenplay, when it does happen, is bread and butter. Theater is fun. Anything to do with theater, and unless I'm very lucky, will make me any money. In the same way, if I had to pick one thing that's the most fun of all, it's singing. I worked as a singer. I was dinner music in a French restaurant in Santa Cruz for 12 years. Quite often just going through the whole evening singing in French mostly, but Spanish, the Mexican cousins, Yiddish, one or two in Italian, anything I could pick up. And people never knew that I was American or spoke English, which was very nice. It was a mask in a way. I loved it. And some time back, I got to sing with my favorite jazz group, the Hot Club of San Francisco, and came away from there thinking once again, damn, this is so much more fun than writing.
So you're going to go on tour with them?
No, I should be so lucky. No, they're great musicians and very nice people. It was just fun.
Do you have any songs in Yiddish?
I still remember some. I've never written anything in Yiddish. My Yiddish isn't nearly that good. So, no, I mostly write songs in English. And Connor got me into doing something a few years ago, which was coming up, for subscribers, coming up with a new song, lyric, or poem online every week for a full year between birthday and birthday. And which was a good thing for me because I hadn't written songs for a long while. And I wrote 53 songs that year, if you count the few that are poems, really. And
with music?
With music. Some is my own music. Other people are setting the lyrics to music.
Yes, and in fact, I'm sorry that the windows are so narrow.
It's exciting. Writing books is a good thing, but writing songs... Hilaire Belloc, the English, in a long day. English poet, mostly remembered for light verse, and for being usual English anti-Semite, but he did write something that's always stayed with me. It is the best trade in the world to make songs, and the second best to sing them. I'm not going to argue with that one. I don't care what he was like.
Well, you've adapted The Last Unicorn for the stage. Right?
Yes, but not well. It's been done properly in the last few years by a guy named, I was going to say Kid, but everybody looks like a kid at my point. It's Ed Rutherford, who actually made a play out of The Last Unicorn as opposed to a dramatized book. It's different. And as a consequence, that's the official stage version of The Last Unicorn. And if, as is possible, a stage musical, a Broadway musical of The Last Unicorn happens, there are producers raising money for it now. If that happens, I'll be there as co-book author, certainly, but that co will be Ed.
But it'll be a musical.
It'll be a musical, and we haven't settled on the score yet, but I very much want to be involved with the lyrics. It's a fantasy of mine that I've had since I was growing up in New York, going to plays and musicals, and my heroes were always the great lyric writers. Hammerstein, Hart, Frank Lesser, John Latouche, Dorothy Fields. They were the golden age.
Well, what were some of your favorite musicals on Broadway?
I think I peaked in college when I got to play Nathan Detroit in Guys and Dolls.
That was
Guys
pretty
and
good.
Dolls is probably the perfect musical. And I saw everything from great ones like My Fair Lady and The Most Happy Fella and so on, to one-night bombs that nobody could possibly remember. At least if they do remember it, I hope they've had decent psychiatric treatment, because I was almost a collector of terrible musicals. In fact, I was always going to start probably somewhere in the wilds of Pennsylvania, Beagle's Losers Playhouse, reviving musicals that hadn't made it more than, say, 5 performances, like the musical version of Carrie, which ran 1 performance.
That sounds like fun, actually.
Yeah, doesn't it?
I bet you could get some repertoire theater to do that.
It happens. Every now and then somebody revives Moose Murders, which is one of the worst mystery plays ever written. And you never know. It's like, I have a cousin who's a choreographer married to an actor. He's done a lot of stage work as well as movies and television. And he once told me Callahan's Law, the theater, whatever you can imagine happening on stage, that's not going to be what happens.
I see.
You're never prepared. As, for example, when I came from California to New York to see him in a play, because it was the lead role. It had been a long time since I've seen him play a lead. And in the first act, opening the first act, walking around stage talking to himself, irritated with something, he was to kick a chair with wheels off stage. He kicked it all right, and it got stuck in the doorway. Didn't go off stage, and he did what you have to do, ad lib, show must go on, and he went over to it and gave it a whack, and it went through the doorway. And it wasn't until I went backstage, between the acts, that I saw his wrist being taped up. He'd broken his wrist doing that. And he came back for the second act and played the part for the run of the play, which was short.
You know the phrase, the show must go on.
But that's what you do, of course.
I can go to extraordinary lengths.
Is that how you feel about the movie of The Last Unicorn? I mean, that's been around for so long, and now it's being re-released, and here you are, going on tour with it.
No, and I'm actually happier with it than you can imagine, because I was braced for the worst. When I knew that Rankin and Bass, whose work I hated, were going to be filming The Last Unicorn, I remember screaming at the guy who actually got the deal made, who's has a credit as an associate producer. Rankin and Bass, why didn't you just go all the way and sell it to Hanna-Barbera? And he looked at me and just said, sadly, they were next, because nobody wanted The Last Unicorn. And Rankin and Bass wanted it, and they shot the works. It's the best thing they ever did. They knew it. And they got me to write the script. They got a real composer to write the score of the songs. And they got real actors to do the voices. I have absolutely no complaints about the movie.
Well, that's
good. And they tapped you to do other writing, didn't they?
No, they didn't. I've never done anything else for Rankin and Bass. It did happen that when I was first starting out, I adapted one of the worst books ever written in English for a movie, which, thank God, but never got made. I think I'd have to leave the country or change my name if it did, but it got me into the Screenwriters Union, which was a lot cheaper then than it is now. And they must have liked the script enough, God knows why, to hire me for a second project, and that did get made. And so that lasted a while, that run. But I haven't done a screenplay, I think, since 1983, that long ago.
Well, describe your tour. How is it being out on the road?
Well, it's exciting. It's tiring. Of course it is. We have so many boxes of books and merchandise with us that took, having Connor and Cinder having arrived in Minneapolis, couldn't immediately pick me up at the hotel, apart from having just driven across country in a day and a half. Apart from that, they had to make space in the van for what we've always called my space capsule. They had to push things enough aside to find a seat for me.
So you're not quite the lead singer in a rock and roll show.
Not hardly. I'm the rhythm section.
Okay, well, here we are in Minneapolis. It's Tuesday the 16th. You'll be in Minneapolis for another couple of days.
Right.
So hopefully people can catch you here. Where are you after this?
I'm not sure of the theaters. There, if you look up the Last Unicorn Tour online, you'll see exactly where we'll be when, and the names of the theaters.
Okay, well, it is true in modern devices. You can point that at your phone, type a few things in, and it will tell you everything, including the temperature where you were last week.
Or at least the average 4-year-old.
That's right.
Me, I don't know.
Are you plugged in? Are you getting acquainted with technology?
I can send email, generally. I can make a phone call on my little flip phone, which doesn't tell me the weather, doesn't cook my dinner, doesn't let me know the world news. It just makes phone calls. That I can handle. But beyond that, it's up for grabs.
Well, making phone calls is actually kind of useful, even in today's society.
It's a practical thing, right.
Any last words, anything that you wanted to be asked and have never been asked before?
Mr. Beagle, why have you always wanted to see Minnesota? I honestly can't say, but I always have. And I've always wanted to see Minneapolis in addition, but generally the whole state, as much as, I don't know why. Maybe it's the fact that I grew up in a left-wing labor family, and I knew my father was a history teacher, and so I knew a lot about the political and labor history of Minnesota, which I'm sure kids growing up in Minnesota may not know. And so it's always been there in the back of my head. And I'm looking forward to seeing as much of it as I can.
Terrific. Well, speaking for all of Minnesota, we hope you find it as good as you had expected. And I would like to thank Peter Beagle of The Last Unicorn for being on this video. I'm Dave Romm of Shockwave Radio Theater and other places. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.